Welcome to HMG Live.
How are we more responsible with our employees? By making sure that we have created the most, equitable and inclusive workforce, and are taking, actions, not just words, but actions to ensure that we have a workplace where employees can do the work of their lives.
It is time to look at this thoughtfully and really seize on the opportunities that it provides us.
This is an opportunity to change the way we work, to change the way we collaborate, to change the culture of the whole workforce in the United States.
A lot of the decisions that you make may or may not be right at the end of the crisis, right? So you have to be courageous enough to continue to make those decisions very quickly.
The focus now is the fusion of human and technology, and how do we have organizations that are technology organizations, but are human, they're distinctly human.
This will be a time of innovation.
HMG Live virtual summits are offered by HMG Strategy, your global partner, helping you reinvent an innovative future of work. A warm welcome to today's host, lead principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the 2012 Silicon Valley Virtual CIO Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal of HMG Strategy. My team and I are delighted to be here with you today. We think we have an amazing program, world-class agenda, folks. Reimagining the business and the future of work, what you need to know now. What an unprecedented time we're in, folks. Probably the most unusual time, extraordinary time in our business and technology careers. Today, we're going to explore what it takes to lead with passion, lead with courage, lead with authenticity, to really build teams, build new innovative ideas and go to markets, all the while with a safe, secure enterprise. So glad to be here and excited for today's event. A big thanks to our partners. Today's summit is powered by Tanium, Commvault, and Softtek. We couldn't do today without your support and engagement. Please take a time to learn more about these three great companies and follow up with them as they reach out to you in the near future. I want to bring in a good friend of mine, Tony Lang. Tony, do you want to turn your camera on? And Tony, we've been collaborating now in the Valley for over 14 years. Really excited about the whole summit today. And what are your few top-line thoughts about today's conference?
Yeah, thanks, Hunter. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this again. Well, to me, this is about innovation. It's about speed, adaptive resilience, which we'll talk about, and connection. And HMG was so ahead of the curve in terms of all of these things. And the connection part is particularly important because you've kept what would otherwise be perhaps a community that maybe drifted apart. You've kept the community together. You've kept the community learning about what the best organizations are doing, what the best leaders are doing, and enabling personal growth. And all of that, I think, is vital in times like these.
Thanks, Tony. You've been a vital, important ingredient in the whole aspect of building out this amazing network. Number one in the Valley, number one in New York, I think number one in North America in terms of the strongest independent technology executive leadership network, perhaps in the world. Thanks, Tony. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Excellent. First up, Brian Brockway, VP and CTO of Commvault. Brian, welcome to the program. Brian, today our panels will hit on some exciting new ways of reimagining the future of business with increased data flow, access, trust to adapt and embrace new digitized collaboration, mentoring, team and customer interactions in totally new ways. As we all start to increase our digital dependency, remember, digital dependency, right? Every new advantage also becomes a potential new risk to contend with if digital flow gets attacked or is hijacked, which we all know happens all too well, Brian. So Brian, we wanted you to come here today to really address these broader macro issues and these micro issues that how should we protect our data centers and what really matters today? Brock, great to see you.
Hey, thanks, Hunter. Glad to be here. Yeah, I think I'm going to come off of two of the words you just mentioned on the intro on basically the safe and secure enterprise. because I think that's kind of the complement to what we've been saying is more and more of the innovations coming forward, faster iterations, agile, quick advances. There's also that looming risk factor on the back end that the more dependent you get on the digital data, the more susceptible you are to risks of some bad things going wrong. And
hey Brock, every company's a digital company now. Every company's a technology company. So this is present center. It really, really matters right here, right now.
Absolutely. And I think what happens in a lot of cases is there's a lot of afterthought that usually goes into protection and recovery. Project gets run out, we hit our first speed bump, and then suddenly everybody kind of looks to say, how do we get it back to where we were? This is what we're seeing a lot of the proactive organizations these days come back in to say, if we start to design this in from day zero, we take a smart approach, we make sure we've got the data protected, recovered, secured, and hardened. That's how we're able to kind of really avoid some of these major pitfalls. And I'll say the pitfalls these days are not just a small thing that you kind of hit on the inside. They're becoming more and more public events. We're seeing that on the news feeds and others that in some of the cases where some of the ransomware and others are coming into environments, when they come over and they do some pretty enterprise-wide destructive techniques, those kind of events usually start about $10 million of impact. And basically what you're doing is going back and rebuilding the enterprise from the data copies you have on the back end.
Interesting times. Wow, you can lose a lot of money really quick.
Absolutely. In fact, what we've seen, and I'll say 10 million, unfortunately, these days is usually the starting point. We've seen a number of other organizations, global supply chains, multiple businesses, even some with ships at sea. They get hit by one of these events and everything comes to a halt. Basically, IT's gone dark. You have to go back in and start rebuilding yourselves from the ground up. So all that wonderful innovation we had suddenly gets stopped immediately. Those events that we've gone through with customers the last couple of years that went all the way to some of the largest ones on records around NotPetya a few years ago, that's really changed the mentality in the business around recovery readiness. Have you built a solid data structure? Do you have distribution of your data assets? Have you woven in enough security to ensure that you're preventing not only bad offenders from the outside, but also avoiding mistakes or some frustrated people on the inside from doing harm to yourself?
What's the worst case scenario?
So as I mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago, back in June of 2017, there was a global public incident called NotPetya. It was some weapons of mass destruction that came in. It was basically targeted after IT. Back 2 years ago, in the aftermath, there was about 10 minutes of destruction that occurred. The original price tag was put about $4 billion. 2 years later, after all the cyber insurance payouts and impact, everything else has come back in, that incident is now usually tagged around $8 billion. So if you look at one of the most global events that hit, and some really large global customers were in the middle of that, that was a massive hit. And basically, they had to go back in and rebuild 20 to 50,000 systems out of the back end. So years of evolution in your data center had to go back and be redone in the matter of a couple of days or a couple of weeks.
So Brock, how do you folks at Commvault help people get ready?
Great question. So a lot of what we've done, so we've come out of the data protection space for many years. We've been an innovation leader of adding all kinds of great capabilities and governance and policy and automation control into that picture. But back and really kind of out of those experiences we had with a couple of those key customers that went through that NotPetya, we've built up this notion, what we call that recovery readiness framework. It starts, I'm going to kind of talk about it in 4 quick dimensions. One, how well have you hardened your environment? So do I have the security controls? Do I have separation of data and my sites and my applications? So if an application got compromised, I want to make sure they just can't go and blow away the entire backend. So that's kind of your foundation step of ensuring you've got a solid strategy and your copies are in the right location if you need to go back and put them into action. Second piece, and I think it's a conversation topic for today too, is back in notion of business continuity. do I test the system? It's no longer a paper-based exercise. I need to use automation to go back and demonstrate to the business. I can recover, I can rebuild, I can bring back 3 applications, or I can bring back 300 applications. That's a lot of the new automation and validation that comes into the picture. If you take that and add it to the third dimension, which is classification, nobody can afford premium class for everything. You've got to come back over and kind of gauge your SLAs. You know, the most critical systems get the most expensive solution, and then I still have the 80% of all the other workloads that run the business I have to deal with. That's where you start to come over and say, how do I organize myself so if my plan does have to be executed, I don't just have 5% of the systems, but I actually have 100% of the systems planned for, and I can go off and start to hit the button and, you know, start to go into automation role. And automation is really the back pinning piece of it all. Tie it all together, put it in, add some intelligence, a little bit of AI onto it to kind of give you a running readiness score of how prepared you are. You know, that's how you're able to sleep soundly at night.
Hey, Brock, what does a readiness assessment look like, and to determine how close you are on that readiness curve?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to pulling numbers, pulling values, assigning some of those SLAs. If your system has enough intelligence, and I'm going to call it operational awareness and analytics built in, you can program in the SLAs and have the system come back and tell you, Hunter, how well are we established? Are we ready to respond, or do we have gaps? You know, do we have latency? Do we have a backlog? And unfortunately, you're 2 weeks out of sync on your data sets at your DR or your BC site. Those are the kind of things you want to be able to expose now, before one of these bad events happens, so your team has the ability to go in and put the corrective action in to get yourself ready.
So Brock, thanks. We are in Silicon Valley here for this summit, and we all know Silicon Valley is the epicenter of innovation, right? They're the best in the world. What are some good tips or lessons learned that you can share, given your 30, 40 years of experience as a practitioner, to folks that are leading and running these data center initiatives?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing these days is, especially I'm going to call it in the new age of the programmatic infrastructure, the cloud, the elastic nature. These are all fantastic capabilities you can bring to bear that 5 or 6 years ago nobody thought they had them, or you had to pay for the ability to come over and recover at a site, and hopefully that you were the first one in the door. We're seeing a lot of intersection these days with the cloud. How do I use the cloud smartly and efficiently? And it's not just about technology, but it's a lot of economics. We have a lot of customers that have used the cloud as a BC DR recovery site, do some digital transformation, convert the VMware VMs into Azure, Amazon, or Google, and do that at scale. And then suddenly you're able to come over and convert what was $1 million of a DR budget plan. You're able to come back over and be a lot more agile and probably spend more like a tenth of that on an ongoing basis.
Brock, how can people get in touch with you?
So I'll put the link in the chat box over here. And we've got a nice paper that kind of goes along with it to take a couple of these concepts and put them into a little bit more understanding and where some of the technology and other things fit. It's a great thing to share with the teams and see, you know, how prepared are your systems today, and are there some room for improvements? So
yeah,
happy to follow up.
Great to have you on the program today. Really good stuff. Kind of one final comment or word on why Commvault matters now?
I think today, as we're seeing data really start to flow and shift and change, moving out of the data center into the cloud, across the clouds, coming from some workloads that are in the clouds, coming back in, there's an increasing need for governance and control. So it's not just technology, it's that business policy layers on top of saying, how do I integrate and how do I move it across these environments? That's been the Commvault hallmark. We've had probably one of the deepest and richest integration portfolios across the environments through the years, and we really allow customers to be more flexible. You can move faster because we generally always have the next place you're going to move into, the next set of applications you're going to transform into, part of the portfolio, so you don't have to go off and add more tools or more complication to the picture.
Hey, Brock, thanks for coming on the program, and thanks for supporting us. Great to see you.
Our pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Have a good holiday weekend.
You too.
Hey, next up, Daphne Jones. Daphne's an amazing three-time CIO, former GE executive and many other organizations. She's now the CEO and founder of Destiny Transformation Groups. Daphne, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter, and hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Hunter, you never stop amazing, informing, and inspiring us. So I appreciate that you invited me to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. Really appreciate it. Wow, this could be a mutual fan appreciation segment here. Hey, Daphne, diversity and inclusion matters for so many reasons. We've been through such a tough time as a country in the past month or 2 months, 3 months. What's on your mind now regarding reimagining opportunities for diversity in a business technology context and why it matters in our building our professional teams?
Yeah, I think right now it's a crisis that we're going through on many different levels. And I think that there's no bad crisis that doesn't allow us to re-examine what our true north is and who we are as people and what's important to us. What used to matter yesterday before the crisis doesn't matter as much today, and the reverse is also true. And so this is the time during the crisis for us to be able to re-examine, reimagine, and use that new information that we're getting and to drive transformation. When you think about people who have diabetes or have a heart attack because of how they used to eat, all of a sudden they reimagine during the crisis of the heart attack how they need to eat differently. Digital transformation prior to COVID was very important. However, since COVID, it's become urgent, it's become critical, it's become a must-do. There are CFOs who didn't know that they could close their books in the quarter end all from home, and they found that they could do that. So this crisis allows you to reflect and reimagine what's really possible. And so when you look at diversity and inclusion, it's about leadership. So there's two things that leaders need to do when they're reflecting and reimagining what's going on in the crisis. Number one is the purpose. Purpose begins and starts everything. Why are we here? What's our true north? Has our companies responded the way we would want them to respond during the COVID, during the George Floyd uprising and things like that? Does that represent who I am as the leader? So purpose and true north is what happens during the crisis. But the second thing that happens in the crisis is be able to look at, are there new stakeholders that have emerged that are important to us that we never may have thought of before? As a board member, we are concerned about shareholders, right? That is, shareholder value is what I focus on as a board member. But now, thanks to the Business Roundtable and ESG and other things, we find that our stakeholders also include the community and includes employees as well as shareholders. So inclusive leadership has become more important these days than ever before. So diversity and inclusion is both key.
Hey, Daphne, you had a great career as a CIO several times over. How did you know you wanted to get into board work? And then how did you land your first board gig? And now I understand you have 3.
Yeah, it's funny, as a CIO, and many of those CIOs that are on the call or CISOs that are on the call also are aware that when you go into this room and it's a boardroom and you kind of tiptoe in and things are pretty quiet and you realize that there are some pretty special people in there. I always wanted to know what they did. And so I researched what board work was all about and decided that based on what stage of life you're in, first you learn all you can, then you earn all you can, then you return all you can. And as I got ready to retire, I decided I want to begin returning more to corporate America, and board work was a way to do that. So I did some research and then charted my course and decided that I wanted to be on a board. And then when I looked at that, I realized that there's a way to do it. And I knew I wanted to be on several boards, and that's actually happened. So I'm on the board of Masonite, on the board of AMN Healthcare, and on the board of the Barnes Group.
Outstanding, Daphne. Congratulations. Well deserved, and they're lucky to have you. What are the top 2 to 3 things people can do now to prepare themselves to be on boards?
Well, I think it starts with, again, purpose, what it is that they want to do. Where are you in your stage of life, and what is going to be important to you as it relates to giving back to corporate America. That's one. Number two, it's being able to identify and understand what a board is, what a board does, and identify what type of board you may want to be on, a private board, a public board, not-for-profit board, etc. Number two, it's then taking a look at your 40 years, 30 years, and distilling that down to a one-page, 350-word document that describes really what your strengths are as it relates to your achievements, and in a way that a board group can actually say that person has the right skill. And then get support from your management team. Make sure your bosses are supportive of you joining a board, and then tell everybody that you know. Tell the search firms, tell Tony, tell Korn Ferry, tell everyone that you know, and those that you don't know, that you would like to join boards. And then you prepare for the process at that point.
You know, when you think of the ideal principles that you practiced and then you achieved your vision, right? You had your goal and you went after it with purpose and passion. Any other tips?
Yeah, I think it's make sure that you know that there's a difference between being an operator and being somebody who's oversight, and understand, and this relates to being on a board, because there's two different roles that are played. There's the management team, and then there's the board members, and they don't do the same thing. One operates on a day-to-day basis, and the other one operates on an oversight basis. So it's really being clear about your goal, and then making sure you've got good role models or people that you can call on as mentors to mentor you through and shepherd you through the process.
So we're talking about launching jointly a boardroom ready practice. A little more on that.
Yeah, the name of the course is called Boardwalk, and you can go on daphneejones.com and you can read a little bit more about the Boardwalk. And the goal that Hunter and I have been talking through is about how do you actually walk people, no matter where they are in their journey, if they're about a year, maybe 2 years away from being ready to join a board, how do we walk you through the process? And there's a 4D framework that we have that allows you to go from demystifying what is a board to making decisions, to doing some due diligence in order to be able to join, get ready for board service. So you don't have to be an expert on what a board is, and no matter where you are, our goal is to walk you through that. And so Hunter and I are going to try to launch that hopefully in the fall or sometime.
That sounds great, Daphne. All good, great insights. Thanks for making the program. Hey, one last question for you. We're in the process of staging a global Women's in Technology Summit. Are you in?
I'm in.
Awesome.
I stay in.
It's great. Daphne, great to see you. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye now. Next up, Chris Hallenbeck. Chris is the America's CISO for Tanium. Chris, welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Hey, Chris, a little bit about Tanium at a high level, and you guys have some recent news, right?
Yeah. We just announced a large round of investment and a partnership with Salesforce. Essentially, what we're looking to do there is leverage our deep insight and access to endpoints to enable workflows around help desk and other aspects of things. Salesforce has this tremendous knowledge and insight into people and the relationships between them. We have that data and access to an endpoint. So being able to marry them together for enterprises is a unique opportunity.
Exciting times, right? So when you think about your role at Tanium, what's the biggest single impact in this pandemic and the shift to work model?
Well, actually, for me personally, and Tanium as a whole, we were kind of lucky. We were about 70% work from home before this started. So we did have a challenge, mostly on the people side of things. For that 30% that was used to going into the office all the time, it was mostly around their routines that got suddenly changed. So it was more of a people issue for us than it was technology. The disruptions for me that happened were more around the initial discussions around business continuity, dusting off all of those plans and looking what matched to the current reality. A lot of people's plans didn't match to a pandemic of this nature where everyone was suddenly locked in their homes in a sense. So there was a lot of planning and meetings around that, while also trying to keep the business going on and all the projects that were already in flight, keeping them moving forward at the same time. For also being in a vendor space, part of that was also having discussions with our customers, helping them to understand how we were going to be able to continue to meet our obligations, be able to protect our deliverables to them. That's always going to be something that they're going to be concerned with. So there was those aspects of things. That was a new disruption that we hadn't really anticipated, I think, in terms of the time involved.
You know, Chris, leadership matters more than ever right now, and we really will we'll hear more from the search panel here in a minute. But leadership matters, and being courageous matters. How would you characterize your leadership style in the pandemic and before and after?
Honestly, I don't think it's necessarily changed overall. A lot of it comes down to setting clear expectations, trusting your people to meet those things. And a lot of it is about removing obstacles and creating opportunity, more so than anything else. I call it being the trouble umbrella for people. You're the one deflecting things out of the way, removing distractions and other things so they can get their job done. If they have a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, what your desired outcomes are, more often than not, they're just going to be able to deliver for you. In this time, like I said, the biggest disruption around everything was around people. So reaching out, touching base with them more often, trying to understand, is there any hint of they're just stressed out? Now when you have everyone at home, sometimes it's that dueling search for a quiet space in the house to both do a conference call at the same time or whatever. And so at times it might just be that you pull one of your people aside and say, look, come this weekend, starting on Friday and all the way through Tuesday, I don't want to hear from you. Unplug. And, oh, what are you supposed to do with your time? Read a book, go binge a show that you haven't already binged, go hit a park, whatever it is. But, sometimes just remind them that not only is it okay to unplug, that it's actually expected. So there's the people side of it that you almost have to be even a little more hyper vigilant about.
Thanks, Chris, for sharing that. In this through this whole process, having the virtual summits through the pandemic and now coming out the other side, hopefully soon, people share with humility. They've shared about servant leadership. What have you noticed about people's work style and lifestyle and leadership style?
Well, I think there's a growing realization that the leaders are people too. I'm hearing it in a lot of organizations. They're commenting that senior executives are on these Zoom calls and other things, and they're seeing them in a very different environment. They're seeing them in their homes. They're seeing them with their kids or their pets coming up right in front of them, and all of the normal disruptions that everyone else is dealing with. So it's a humanizing component of things. There's always this tendency to look at leadership as being in this rarefied air that's inaccessible. And I think if anything else, that's one of the things that this has changed, is more people are seeing their leaders as just other people going through some of the same things.
What are your biggest challenges now coming out of the crisis and scaling up and powering up for growth?
Well, for us, it's much of the same things, lots of communication. We're still trying to figure out what those trigger points are for when we will re-engage in person. That's going to be a day-by-day type of assessment that happens, and we may poke our heads out the door and decide things aren't going the way we thought they might, and we retreat back a little bit. So it's going to be fluid for a good long time. As far as the business goes, like I said, we are a largely telework workforce anyway. So much of that part of it, we just keep moving forward on.
Interesting. When you think about Tanium, tell us a little bit about the culture.
It was really, very interesting to come into the company when I did. We almost exclusively were hiring mid to senior level people in their careers. So very much all adept at working, it's be self-starters, things of that sort. It's also a culture where you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It's kind of awesome to not be the smartest person in the room because there's so many really brilliant people around, and we can have great conversations. You can bring up a problem. The key is you have to come with what you've done to try and solve it yourself. And then you'll find that everyone else will be eager to jump in to help you troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. That collaborative nature of things was one of the things that became the most infectious when I came on board.
Fascinating stuff. Chris, when we think of Tanium, what should we think of when we think of Tanium? What's the key problem that you folks solve?
Well, it's unifying the aspects of endpoint management and security so that we bridge those gaps in IT. Typically, you see the IT enterprise side and the security side as being these distinct silos that rarely talk to one another. There's very distinct points where they interoperate, but overall they work in their own worlds. And so with a single platform like we have, you have this opportunity to bring both those teams together, same tools, same set of data, so that they can work towards a same purpose at the same time. And I'm seeing more and more organizations now where security and operations are, rather than buying distinct best of breed tools, are looking for best of outcome. And that means that they're working together in order to achieve that.
When you think of your clients, what does winning look like to you providing them this service?
Well, for me, it's reducing that reactive cycle of incident response. So my career, even though I started out as a Unix sysadmin, all the way through, it's always been around security and incident response in some manner. And you just get into this reactive cycle. You get used to responding to incidents. So if you can be more proactive, if you can handle the IT hygiene related items in a shorter cycle, you can reduce your reactive side of things. And that's really ultimately the goal, is to reduce the disruption to your organization that incidents cause.
Interesting. Chris, what can people do to learn more about Tanium and get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, right off the website, tanium.com. From there, we have solution briefs, links also to videos off of YouTube where you can preview a number of features of the product as well, and then reach out for contact to have a deeper discussion.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program today, and I really appreciate Tanium supporting us. Please reach out to Tanium and get connected and find out more if you're in this looking for some great security solutions. When you think about today being a unique time in the point in the history of business and technology, I often I like to say it's the best time ever. Probably the most challenging, craziest time ever too. What are your thoughts on it? Best time ever?
I think there's unique opportunities in it. I'd always, given the tragedy of what's happened, I don't know about best time ever. From a technology perspective, it's certainly a very engaging time. It's going to be very dramatic shifts. Brian had talked about, the data protection side of things, and, with everyone rapidly having to deal with work from home for a lot of organizations, that meant moving to cloud-based things. I think we're going to see a lot of people learn some lessons around how to do that and how not to do that, because they had to do it so quickly. I think we'll see a round of incidents that come out of that.
Interesting. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the program. And again, folks, reach out to Tanium and check out what they're up to.
Thanks, Hunter.
Looking forward to seeing you soon, and have a great holiday weekend.
You too.
Excellent. Next up is our Reimagining the Business and the Future of Work panel. First up, Shaun Braun, the Group CIO at Stryker. Shaun, welcome to the program.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Hunter.
Great to see you. Where are you coming in from?
Right here in Silicon Valley. So Los Altos, California.
Excellent. Really appreciate your engagement. Stryker, a little bit about the company.
Yeah, it's really on a shift from being a large med device company to a med tech company. So I think that's been one of the exciting parts about this. It's very diverse. We have a lot of products that go in the body and stay in the body with hips and knees. We have a lot of products that go in the body and come out of the body when you think about endoscopic cameras to help with surgery. And then we also just have a lot of products that stay outside the body, back of ambulance, all the way across. So very diverse set of products, great mission and culture. And obviously we've had the opportunity to really affect a lot of things during COVID-19 in a positive way for patients. Excellent. Great job. Shaun, when you think about leadership now leading digitally via a pane of glass or a laptop, what in your opinion, what is effective leadership today in this environment? Yeah, it's obviously changed, Hunter, and I think that's one of the challenges when we think about, I used to travel 75% of the time, jump on a plane, get with either customers or teams internally, partner groups. And so I think leadership has definitely changed in the effect that we have to now be using these remote practices. And so all of us, I think, are having to pick up new tactics and skills in that effect. You think about working with teams in Japan. The meeting you have in the building during work hours, you didn't really get the work done in those meetings. It was always after, at dinner or otherwise, where you'd have that real connection and understand that voice of customer. So I think it's more important that we take that authentic leadership, show parts of us that you wouldn't normally in a video conference, but that's the only medium we have right now, is have those one-on-one times where you can really connect with the individuals you're working with. And so it's a bit of a challenge, but I think we have to take those moments, share something personally about yourself, share something about the culture or the mission of the company. Take time to ask people on your team, how are you doing? There's been a lot going on, obviously, with George Floyd and COVID, and just taking time where you normally would do that in a hallway conversation to just stop in a medium like this and make sure you're connecting with both your customers and individuals across the teams. It's also fascinating. The other side of that is how much you can connect now with people, given that you're not spending that 12 hours on the plane. It's very true. I think all of us felt, if you had to get a large group together for a meeting, everybody would be doing the calendar dance and people are zigzagging all over the globe and it would be 2-3 weeks out. Now it's like, hey, we should get a meeting together. Let's pull these folks together. And miraculously, it shows up 2 days later on the calendar. So I think there's absolutely positive elements that we're all on the ground and we're able to get more time together. So the future of work is defined as a distributed workforce. Will there be innovation? I think a lot of the prototypes and pilots that we had teased out in the past are now getting accelerated. And we had a lot of different, we did a lot with augmented reality. We did a lot with digital twins around service. We did a lot with data capture. And there were elements of that found hooks and value for customers. But one instance where we had a lot of our surgical reps would assist and mentor both the materials that had to be prepared for a case and then during the case with the surgical staff. Now with COVID-19, and for the very positive reasons, they were blocked out of hospitals in many cases. So how now can we take technology, which we had internally with remote cameras and other activities, and use that, innovate with that to make sure that the right care is being given to the patients through the care teams and surgical staff. So there's been a lot of this experimentation, I think, on digital innovation that across every industry. And this is a catalyst now. Our customers need it. We have a lot of these technologies ready to deploy, and there's been a very nice synergy of bringing those two together. Excellent, Shaun. Stay with us. We'll circle back to you here in a minute. Next up, Maria Latushkin, CTO from Omada Health. Maria, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to see you virtually now. Usually we see each other in person. Great to have you engaged, though. Hey, so tell us, regarding business models and the whole iteration process, agile, being faster, hybrid models that work, and working remote, the whole remote work culture. What's the best business model, business operating model today going forward?
You know, it's so interesting, and both you and Tony mentioned that earlier, and then also Shaun alluded to the fact that even though we're so remote, we are actually, in a way, find more time together, and so many things have been changing with what COVID imposed on us. And as I think about it, really, like the three keywords I can think about: it's speed, it's innovation, and it's being human. And especially as we're thinking through how to lead our teams through this turbulent time. You mentioned agile. One of the ways I've been thinking about it, and the parallels that I've been seeing, is what agile offers and how we can be using it in actually reimagining the business models. Agile by its nature is tuned towards very uncertain ways of operations. You don't know what the outcome would be. You're trying to get the feedback loop as fast as possible. You try to do new things. You try to experiment. And this is a lot of what we find right now: the frequent communications that is really needed, the shorter feedback loops, and then really being comfortable with the fact that reprioritization and frequent planning is something that we have to get really, really good at. Because the macro circumstances change so fast on us. And this is where the speed and the innovation really comes in. And then finally, being human and communicating. While we, in theory, have more access to each other with not having to hop on planes and doing the calendar dance and like trying to figure out how to deal with time zones, I find myself sometimes I'm on the West Coast and doing a speaking event in New York before my workday even starts. And so there's definitely, some perks to being remote and working from home in terms of being able to access more people and reconnect with more people. But it is a deeply isolating phenomenon that we find and now our teams find themselves in. And so another really important piece that also Agile tells us about is communication, frequent communication, having a lot of discipline in communication, being extremely clear in how we set expectations, how we describe the problems, and what we say success looks like.
So Maria, your communication skills are exceptional. You know that though, right?
Oh, you're too kind.
Yeah. A little bit about Omada Health.
So we are a digital health company we originated with treating the prediabetes condition, then slowly expanded into other conditions such as treating of diabetes itself, mental health, and most recently musculoskeletal, as well as hypertension and other diseases. And what we found ourselves right now with COVID specifically is this real need and in being able to treat people remotely, with people not having access to healthcare or not feeling great about actually coming into the hospitals. What we're trying to give is giving people both the actual treatment, but also the comfort and support in between them being able to see their providers.
Excellent stuff. Wow. Stay with us. We'll circle back to you. Next up, Rucha Nanavati from Albertsons. She's the Group VP of IT. Rucha, welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Hey, listen, let's talk about how customer behavior changed dramatically in a matter of 100 days, right?
My God, yes. Talk about a sea of change. Just the way the pace at which the change came in. We are all working from home, right? Government said shelter at home. We're not going to work. We're not going out for entertainment, things like that, which means we're cooking more, right? Everybody's cooking more, experimenting as well. But in general, you need groceries. And along with that also comes the safety aspect. You don't want to go too many times. You want more options of, home delivery or, contactless, and all that has accelerated a lot of programs, or expansion has happened on drive up and go or home delivery, or more and more contactless experience. We have our North Star for our stores have always been easy, exciting, and friendly. exciting products. It's easy for you, whichever channel you want to shop. We have added safe to that. It has to be now easy, exciting, friendly, and safe, whether it is online, whether it is home delivery, you just want to come pick it up, or you want to be in our store. So I think the whole business model has shifted to accommodate that. Fast adaptation has become the key.
So Shaun talked about innovation. Maria talked about agile and speed. I got to believe that in an essential industry, I mean, you guys kept us all alive, right? Staying open and feeding us through this pandemic. There's a big competitor on the block in your industry. I got to believe you guys inside are insanely innovating to stay ahead of the competition.
Absolutely. Yes, you said it. Insanely focused on that, right? Maniacal about it. Whether it was, so staying true about our true north, right? And also just adapting quickly to say, Mother's Day is around the corner. Not all of our stores may have the e-commerce abilities, but how will we make it available so you don't want to come into the store? You don't have to. Just pick it up from the curbside and, make it available. I think Maria talked about being agile. In a couple of weeks, just come up with that and said, you don't want to come into the store? It's all good. You could still buy flowers for your mother. From that to, expanding our digital offering across the board, whether it is our one-touch fuel, don't touch the fuel centers if you don't want to contactless delivery, plexiglasses in the middle, so even the store is safe. I think across the board, you look anywhere, safety in the distribution centers or manufacturing plants. I think just innovating as fast as as we can.
Rucha, stay with us. I'll circle back to you in just a minute.
You bet.
Great stuff. Next up is Rodney Fullmer. Rodney is the global CTO of Aero Electronics. Rodney, good to see you.
Hey, Hunter, nice to see you too.
In a travel restricted world, our world's been turned up down. We need to engage with our customers. There's B2C, there's B2B. A little bit about Aero, the scale, the size that you work at, and you're based in Denver.
Yeah, based in Denver. Yeah, Aero's a large multinational company, so we're Fortune 500. I think probably 110, 111 now. So a really large organization, 20,000 employees distributed around the world. So the transition to being very remote was a big challenge for us. Being a B2B company, we did a lot of sort of in-person, a lot of relationship-based engagement with our customers. And so, we really had to pivot around that in a big way.
What are you doing more effectively now to network with your customers and spend time with your customers?
So I'm sure, like everybody, lots of video chats. So we did a big pivot to video, the way everybody I'm sure has. But we've also really accelerated our digital strategy and starting to look at, how can we do more market analytics? How can we do more social, more digital, more content in particular? And sort of weaving that into our normal processes that, was always there, but it was more of a adjunct to our traditional sort of business engagement models. And now it's moving that to be more on par or even ahead of our traditional engagement models. So a real big shift for us, not so much strategically, but just in how we're going about executing against that strategy.
Gotcha. How would you characterize your leadership style?
Great question. So I think, engaging, and maybe I'll kind of contrast it for what sort of has shifted in the recent situation. So I think a much, much bigger focus on engagement with our employees as opposed to sort of the more traditional, focus on business performance, business outcomes. Those two have always been part of the equation. But I think just as a lot of the other panelists have said, now more than ever, it's just a time to be there, be present, be engaged, be real, be human. Like those are all just such important characteristics of being an executive that you can't let that stuff go by when you're sort of dealing with monthly, quarterly pressures of making your numbers and making your financial commitments.
Rodney, stay with us. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Next up is Rajeev Tyagi from Softtek. He's the COO of US and Canada. Hey, Rajeev, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you, Hunter.
Great to see you. Where are you based today?
I'm in Silicon Valley as well.
Another valley. Great. Love it. Hey, a little bit about
Beautiful weather outside.
Good weather lately. That's good. Well, a little bit about Softtek.
So we're just a better alternative to a lot of technology companies in offshore right now. It's just an elevator pitch, Hunter, just to get you going. But what we focus is really helping our customer with their digital strategies and implementing IT modernization and cloud transformation, things like that.
So with a bit of a more strategic wrap around it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Since you see across a lot of Fortune 500 companies, you're in an elevated role. What's the top advice you're giving tech leaders now?
Very good question. So first thing, everything we heard today from the different panelists, it is pretty hard for a lot of companies and a lot of folks, and we need to be very empathetic about it. So in this current situation, basically giving three main advice, right? First one is how do you survive this? How do you build resiliency in your business? By just quickly harnessing something low-hanging fruit. For example, one of the largest fitness gyms in the country is our customer. So their gyms got shut down very quickly, and so we helped them in 4 weeks to come up with their online fitness program, so they can continue to keep their subscribers and engage them. Another Social Security Medicare company of another country with 120 subscribers, they needed to come up with telehealth very quickly, and so we helped them to get that functionality very out, so they can continue to service their subscribers. And there are other examples where a services company, they shut down their offices. They needed to virtualize a lot of their desktop using VDI so they can continue to be in the business. So those are like sort of the first survival instinct. We helped a lot of our customers to make sure that they continue to survive through this really rough time. And the second advice is a little bit midterm, right? How do you, I mean, there are a lot of things that Rodney talked about or Rucha talked about. It's the same thing. How do you prepare for yourself for the new normal that's about to come, right? When it's going to come, we don't know. And our biggest advice is stay very probabilistic, right? You have to be very probabilistic thinkers. You don't really know what's going to happen. So you have to create a lot of different probabilities and prepare for it. And one of it has to be the digital. And how well do you know your customers? How well do you understand how their preferences are changing? If you're not doing the right data strategy, then it's going to be hard. And you don't want to be the Canadian phone company in 2007 and don't read the how the winds are moving, right? So you need to be able to execute these things and prepare yourself. There are definitely, even though as painful as this time might be, there are going to be winners and losers at the end of it. And so how do you position your company to be able to come out of this stronger and take advantage of it? And so that's our second advice. And our third advice is really, what's going on in the world, Hunter. I think Daphne touched on it. A lot of leadership skills that Shaun and others touched. There's a lot of racial injustice, income inequality. And what we are advising to our customers are like, how can you use technology to help resolve some of this, right? Can you, if you move beyond your general boundaries of work, can you actually hire people from other regions that you weren't hiring today? Can you keep your workforce fully engaged, productive, and secure by using different ways to engaging it? And that's something that's going to help the community in general.
Excellent, great insights. Rajeev, when we go back to a hybrid model, any insights? There's a question in the chat right now. Insights regarding navigating the hybrid model well?
Yeah, so, let me just go through the question. So the main advice in the hybrid is to stay engaged with your stakeholders, and that could be your customers, the employees, and make sure you create collaborative tools so you can continue to engage with them, be productive, stay secure, and most importantly, make sure that you're providing them the quality of services that you're looking for.
Rajeev, great comments, great insights, great thought leadership. Stay with us, okay? I'll circle back to you. Back up to Shaun. Hey, Shaun, question for you. When you think about how companies are growing organically and through acquisition here in these uncertain times, any comment on the two ideas?
Yeah, it's interesting. And the one that just, pops to mind right out of the gates is Lululemon and them picking up Mirror, which is, I don't even think I'd call that an adjacent. I think it's a whole new business that they're dipping their toe into. I think all of us have to look at our own businesses and think about, and Rajeev just touched on it, how are we going to augment our businesses, our experiences with customers in a digital fashion? And, in healthcare, you think about now the amount of information that's going to be passing back and forth in a virtual manner. How can you mine that data to start to get insights, to nudge clinical workflows, to start to give triage early on, as opposed to having folks sit in emergency rooms and waiting rooms and fill out paperwork? We can start to use technology to reach out. So I think all of us have to look at our industries and look at what aspects the customer's ready for. We don't want to get too far out ahead of ourselves here and start grabbing onto digital solutions that the customers won't be able to digest. But this new workspace, this new reimagined, the new normal that we're living in, all of us are getting used to it. And we're not going to come off of this baseline. Now, we may drop back a little bit. I think we don't want to be too aspirational and think that this new norm is a panacea of digital, but there is going to be a new norm, a new foundation of expectation across industry about how individuals can work in a digital fashion. And I think that's going to be a critical aspect, that each of us look at our industries and start to measure what the customer is ready for and what portion that we think we can play in and have unique value that we can bring.
I love your example of Lululemon buying Mirror. I think that's brilliant. It really is helping facilitate, enabling, or leading with the business about reinventing the whole go-to-market, right?
It is for sure. And Peloton, which, many of us probably use, I had heard about it. I didn't really understand what the model was, started to read a little bit about it. And I heard from a lot of my friends, oh, I'm getting Peloton. And their whole model was around subscription base, and that was something that, again, as we think about procedures, should we be selling large capital equipment or should it be subscription based with services wrapped around it? I ended up, there's a lot of pressure in my house. I've got 4 kids and everybody's like, oh, if we're going to be stuck here, we need to get a Peloton. I was like, there's no way we're getting like a, $2,500, bike. We're just not going to do it. Then I started poking around, just reading about it because I was interested in their whole business model. I was like, wow, subscription based and 0% financing for 5 years. It was $50 a month. I was like, okay. I tried to keep it a secret, but my wife was hounding me too much about getting it. Finally, I told her, all right, it's showing up. It's 4 weeks out though. So I think that subscription model and how you actually bring these digital solutions to your customers is just as important as the actual technology that you're implementing.
Well, we had a huge health shift too, and a huge work life balance shift too, right? My Peloton is 7 weeks out. I ordered it about a week ago. So I'm with you on that one. Fascinating.
Yeah, I wish I had taken that insight when I could have picked stocks early on. I should have seen that 4 weeks as something to jump on that bandwagon early.
All right, stay with us, Shaun. I'll circle back to you in a minute. Rucha, you're up next. Rucha, when you think about reimagining and reinventing basically a pretty traditional grocery store idea or business model, what are you thinking about? Where's the edge for you all and what's next?
The edge is giving all the options to customers. We are not the ones who want to decide, should you always be doing online grocery shopping or not? And that's what it is. I think just staying close to the customer, watching them and providing all the options. And we have seen this. We have seen customers who never would even think about going on digital media and online shopping or something. They are doing it. If you can look at the studies, 62% of people said they have tried it in this short time frame. So that is available. You want to pick your own grocery, that is available in a very, very safe way. And the safety, there's a technology aspect of providing safety as well, right? Automated temperature checks or counting how many people come into the store. We've had some counties where they said you can only have, capacity is restricted. So, provide technology there. And there's a contrast to procedures as well, in-store experience, right? Special hours for vulnerable customers or or checking the high traffic areas. And there's technology to clean your stores as well. There is all kinds of plugins for technology, but overall, I think the edge is absolutely provide all the options to customers. And right now they want more omni-channel option, we want to get into the pantry onwards, rather than just saying when you start thinking about when you order, rather than just when you start ordering. We want to go, steps ahead of it. Go to your pantry and think about what are you going to think about ordering. So I think it is about giving all the options that they want to shop with us.
Rucha, thanks for your comments. Stay with me. I'll be back to you in just a minute. Hey, Maria, you're up next. When you think about going back to work, what does it look like?
It's interesting. I so vividly remember when our office closed and we were making bets on how long it's going to take. And so we had this moment in our head that we're leaving the office now, and there's going to be a Monday, a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, when we're all going to come back and we're going to turn back the light switch. And we all realize this is not how it's going to be. And at this point, I don't think it's going to be an event. I don't think that anybody's going to, there's going to be this Monday when everybody comes back to work. So when we come back to work, it will be gradual. It will be in different stages. And because of all of the regulations and health considerations, I don't think the new work life is going to be the same as it was before. And there's going to be, if you think about it, on any given day, even for the companies that are not digital first, a large percentage of your workforce is not going to be in the office. And so the companies will need to rethink what we come to work for. And is it that now that we've learned that we can actually be productive working remotely, will we be doing more of the transactional type of work remotely, and then maybe coming back for more of a social connection, more of the time together, and what would that look like? So I think it would be different. And even in this hybrid, I don't think we're going to be fully remote and never come together in the office. That would be a very miserable reality. So I choose not to think that this is going to be the case. But in this hybrid model, the one thing that has to be true is that we have to change the way we communicate, change the way we document things, the way we engage with each other, as if we are fully remote, in terms of the clarity and crispness with which we communicate. And so that would be, for me, I think the biggest thing that companies need to realize, that relying on osmosis and everybody meeting in the hallway and making decisions in the hallway that we're so used to and so comfortable with, this is no longer going to be the case. So I'd say that if there's one thing I think about, is how to be much clearer, much crisper in communication, and also teaching ourselves to over communicate. If you said it once to one person, it doesn't mean that everybody knows it and everybody got it. And making sure that information is available, it's crystallized, and there are insights that people can get from it is really, really important.
Maria, thanks for coming on the program today. Stay with us. I'll be back to you in just a minute. Hey, Rodney, follow-up question for you. When you think about everything digital now and analytics and social, what's on your mind regarding analytics driving business decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's absolutely top of mind. I kind of mentioned before that, our business model has traditionally been one based on a lot on relationships. And, when you have that kind of close relationship and that contact with people, you can sort of intuit what you're going to go and do next. And when you have that taken away to a degree and replaced by the things that we're doing, you gotta fill that void. And so we're very focused on sort of analytics around our customer base, our markets, and really introducing that into our business planning and decision-making process everywhere we can. It's always been important, but it was supporting, and now it's really becoming a primary focus for us. Really important area.
What does winning look like to you in that space?
It's a good question. Winning looks like your anticipation of what's going to happen and what customers need is in line with what actually plays out. And we're sort of at the right place with the right services for our customers that go and help them solve all the many challenges that everybody's having right now. For me, that's success.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for coming on the program today, Rodney. Stay with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Rajeev, final comment from you regarding the future here, right? So it's digital, everything in the cloud, everything virtualized, right? It's safe and secure. What's next?
So it's part of everything. As you said, we want to stay probabilistic, right? So the brick and mortar shops are not completely going away, but the new normal is going to have a mix of all of different things. What's really the future is about cognitive, right? So we're building upon data, and data is enabling digital. But as what we're seeing in the future, and some of our customers already doing it, is using cognitive ability of AI and machine learning, and starting to really separate themselves from other competition, right? So one of our customers, a big, large restaurant, they have restaurants all over the airport and restaurants, retail stores, and they need to be ready with something for the future where, Rucha talked about contactless, they talk about touchless, right? They want to be able to operate at the airport without having anybody to be able to touch their screens to pay or anything of those sorts. And they're already using a lot of their digital technologies and cognitive ability to anticipate what the customer's need could be and digitize the rest of it. And so pretty exciting future in front of us.
Hey, Rajeev, thanks for coming on the program today, and thanks for supporting the HMG network and platform. How can people get in touch with you all?
Well, I will leave my email as well. It's my first dot last name at softek.com, but I'll put it on the chat so everyone can reach out. We're here to help. The whole idea is that we're touching so many customers. We learn so much from them. And if any of our friends here on the HMG panel, anybody wants to bounce some ideas or need some help, it's not about business, it's about helping each other, feel free to reach out.
Rajeev, great job. Thank you for supporting us, and thanks for being here. Hey, Shaun, great to see you. Thanks for being here today, and Rodney, yourself as well. Rucha, always good to see you. Maria as well. This might be the best panel in 3 months, no kidding, regarding reimagining and reinventing the future of work and the future of business. So thank you. I'll send you my author's note for my new book, digital copy, and the book when it comes out in October. And you each are nominated for the top tech executives for 2021 recognition program that we're launching here in the next month. So stay with us and stay connected. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Great. Next up is the Industry Search Executive Update. Hey, Tony, welcome to the program. Tony Lang is the Managing Director of Diversified Search. Everyone knows and loves Tony in the Valley, west of the Mississippi, actually all over the world. Tony's amazing. He's not only a search exec, former CEO and investor. Tony, good to see you.
Well, good morning. Hopefully I'm on. Yeah, great. Thanks, Hunter. This is such a fascinating time. And I'd really like to talk about 3 things to start with, and how technology, and particularly the CIOs, have impacted. First, it's corporate overall strategy of the business. IT has saved a lot of companies. CIOs and our top leaders have a big voice. The business models are changing. That's 1. 2, technology. And that's what drives it all. You probably needed to have started years ago on the digital transformation, putting in new modern architectures. Data is the fuel for digital. Everyone wants Apple front end, Amazon back end. How do we make this all happen? And then the final piece is the people roadmap, which is all about leadership. And we're going to talk about that hopefully in a lot more detail in a second. But those are the things. What's happening to your company? What's happening to your IT? What's happening to your people?
Brilliant. Great sharing. Thank you. Hey, next up, Michael Piacente. Michael's a co-founder and managing director of Hitch Partners. Michael, great to have you on the program again.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Tony. Hey, Mark. Good to see you guys again, and everyone else out there. First, I wanted to completely agree with Tony's opening statement going back to the beginning. So I think you and your team have really done an exceptional job kind of driving what I believe is this critical kind of and very much needed connection in both the CIO and CISO community. We've done a number of these together now. And I think never before have we seen an opportunity for growth and expansion in the technical leaders. But we've also never seen this much stress and this much lack of work-life balance, and frankly, the rate of burnout, and it's concerning. And I think the leaders need this. You need diversity in the way that we speak to one another. We can't constantly be in front and looking at alerts all the time. And so I applaud you and the team for doing this. It's great for us to be able to speak and connect with the community, but I think you were the first ones and certainly did it the most seamless. So
excellent. Thanks
to you guys.
Really appreciate the compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So what are you seeing out there then?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a little bit, I actually spent kind of 10 years learning under the Bob Concanons and this guy named Tony Lang for a while, on CIO search. I actually came out as an IT practitioner into executive search, which was a very odd way to go about it, but it was pretty fascinating. And like I said, I got to learn and mentor under these incredible people. But we actually focus more on the CISO side. Hitch Partners is really, most of our clients are executive search as well, but we provide services for software producing companies with extremely high consequence data that are already using and well into the cloud from a cloud native or cloud first. We also work with a lot of enterprises that are rapidly changing. And so on the CISO side, we're seeing quite a bit of new change in the way that leaders are kind of reacting, CISO and CIO. A lot of it comes down to the frequency and intensity at the executive and board level. You are very much now sitting at the table. If you are in a CISO or CIO world, the ability to determine and narrate the business risk and corporate preparedness is unparalleled to what we've seen before. And so really, we've had to up our game. We've also had to celebrate our wins and know how to work on personal branding. That doesn't come naturally to many. And I think the other thing, the other area that we're seeing is this sort of emphasize, I'm not a big fan of this word, but this sort of humanizing element behind their management style, spending much more time and quality time with your team, not talking about security and IT related issues. We're talking about life and what they're doing. We have one client that has a kind of a bake off. They talk about what they're baking and what they're making at home and like introducing recipes to one another. So just something completely off the topic of threats and alerts. And I also think that goes to hiring as well. I mean, the CIO and the CISO, if you think about it right now, in many businesses are the only, in some cases, the only strategic hiring manager. And so there's a real opportunity to really change the way that hiring is done in many of these companies, to be more empathetic, to actually show the rest of the organization how hiring can be done when we start to bounce back. But there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different themes, but it's a pretty fascinating time. I've said this before on your episodes, but I think it's really a golden age and a golden era for the CIO and the CISO. But we've just also got to be careful not to burn ourselves out here. So.
Hey, Michael, what do you mean by the only strategic hiring manager? I wasn't quite clear on that.
Yeah, sorry. So if you look around the organization, any kind of go-to-market, especially in the last few months, it's starting to bounce back now. But in the CISO space, we were seeing some of the companies that were the only hire they were making in any kind of go-to-market, whether it was sales, operations, finance, biz dev, whatever it might be. The only hiring they were making was in the CISO space, the head of security. A lot of it was emphasized around security engineering and making sure that you have a very strong SecEng and AppSec kind of story, whether you're an enterprise or a startup. And so there were many cases where you look around where all 400 or so positions were on hold, except for that one critical IT or security position. That's what I meant by that. And so they've really got to up their game. And it's also a great opportunity because frankly, companies in general don't have exceptional hiring processes. So that's a whole other episode we could get into, but they just don't think critically about it, empathetically about it. And I think CIOs and CISOs have really done a great job because of the content is so complex and because it's just something they're very good at. They're just built for crisis. And I think it's showing as a hiring manager now.
Excellent insights. Thanks, Michael, for coming on the program. I'll circle back here in a minute. Next up, Mark Polanski, Senior Client Partner of Korn Ferry. Mark, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Hunter. Good to be here.
What's in your mind?
Well, I'll be the bearer of good news and glad tidings, which my colleagues have heard me preaching for the last few days and almost 2 weeks now. When the pandemic came and all my searches were put on hold, I sort of got depressed a little bit. But the key was that they were on hold. They weren't canceled. They weren't tossed away. They were just simply put out there because our clients were telling us that they didn't have the bandwidth to focus on a search. They were too preoccupied, and rightfully so, too preoccupied with survival, cash preservation, keeping X thousands of employees working productively and in good health and well-being at home, et cetera. So we sort of were thinking, and I was sort of thinking, that come fourth quarter, Tony and me and our peers would be pretty darn busy. So I'd mentally already taken off the summer and much of the fall, waiting for fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, about 2 weeks ago, the phone started ringing like crazy, and the demand came back. In fact, it came back plus some that we didn't know were going to be looking, but I have observed how technology has made a difference during the pandemic, and they're jumping on it. Companies that have older technology, older staffing up and down are looking at technology differently again. And just yesterday, LinkedIn reported its most active job hunting day since the pandemic started. So all of the signs are up, and that's why Michael and Tony and I are all smiling.
Do you have a poll, Mark, that you want to launch here?
Yeah, I was just, thank you, Hunter. I was just talking about the demand side, clients looking for people. But thank you, Nikki. I have a poll here that says, pre-COVID to now, are you much more likely to consider changing jobs? Are you somewhat more likely to take a phone call from me and my peers, or are you about the same, or perhaps you're somewhat less or much less likely to change roles before? And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the results. So please vote, and we'll come back to the results in a minute or two.
Excellent, Mark. Thanks so much. Hey, Tony, back to you.
Yeah.
When you think of leadership today and leading courageously in this crisis, there are going to be winners and there are going to be also rans. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with that completely. I call them heroes and villains. And the heroes probably started a while ago and the villains didn't. But I think if you look at it kind of broadly and conceptually, the leadership element of having vision, boldness, courage, building trust, influencing, communicating, those things are there and, added in this environment, sort of deliberate calm, some bounded optimism. Those things are required. Leaders have had to do hard things, cuts, layoffs, restructuring. They've got to do those with compassion. But there's a new set of traits that are actually, they're not new. There are a set of traits that are bubbling up and being accentuated. And that's, frankly, no one had the game plan for this. No one knew, like, we've been through this, we know what it looks like. And so this new thing is top-down no longer works. It's more kind of a circle approach where the leader is at the center of a circle and listening to input and moving quickly. A lot of the great people we've heard speaking already have talked about kind of this agile thing. But if you're going to be agile, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be authentic, saying to your team, help. I don't know what to do. Let's sit around. Let's discuss. Let's talk about it. So you've got to listen. You've got to be open. You've got to be humble. And all those things, I think, are the new leadership skills. Gone as a top-down approach. And we talk about COVID accelerating technology. I think it's accelerated leadership. And these new traits are the accelerated kind of leadership that's really important. The term I use is adaptive resilience. What's that? Well, think of a fire analogy. If you're fragile, trouble comes, boom, the fire's out. If you're overly resilient, like put a dome over that flame, all hell breaks loose, you're unmoved. Well, that's not very good. The adaptive resilience says, as the world shifts and as things shift, your flame, your fire moves and adapts. It's got flexibility, coherent long-term, effective short-term, fact-based, risk-based, customer-based, all that stuff, and it's agile. And that's the new norm for me, adaptive resilience.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you, Tony. Always deliver. Perfect. Michael, over to you.
It's never fun. It's never fun to follow Tony. It's just never, no.
What are you passionate about now? What are you passionate about now regarding the CISO and CIO relationship and making it better?
Yeah, actually, that's an excellent question. I think both executives actually have very similar challenges, and that is actually very much to Tony's point. Looking at this from his perspective, there's a couple of areas. One is that we really need to have CIOs and CISOs, and we're seeing this trend much more now, but we need to have them really focus in on their communication and presence. And most CISOs, for instance, they may have come from an IT background or an engineering background or compliance background. Their trajectory got them to a certain place, and they're kind of missing a gap in one way, shape, or form as they're building out their careers and their arsenal of skills. But one area is either communicating with the technical teams, it's communicating with the cross-functionally, or communicating with the board. And CIOs have very similar challenges, and so I think right now what we're spending most of our time on, in addition to, like Mark said, an enormous surge that's really, for us, it's been kind of during COVID, but it certainly happened a lot more in the last couple of weeks, is helping these CISOs and CIOs establish their brand. I'm pretty vigilant about, when interviewing candidates, to make sure that they have the proper artifacts, that they're both internally but also externally. Be in the community, be a leader in the community, have a voice. Find your niche of your topic that you're passionate about and speak about it. And others, at the very least, by the way, it's an amazing recruiting strategy, but it's also great for your personal brand. And I think the second piece that we're seeing that we're most concerned or spending most of our time is it's really enabling CISOs and CIOs to sort of think about, they are the chief look around the corner officer at this point in their companies. They are being brought in early and often, to talk about what is going to happen in whatever post-COVID looks like, phase 2 COVID looks like, work from home, protest situations. I mean, there's so much unrest and an unprecedented time that they really look for, as they say, how can we achieve these challenges with technology? How can you help us get there? We want your advice, we want your insights. And I think a lot of CIOs and CISOs are moving from a more reactive model to a more proactive model. But at the same time, they finally have the platform and the seat at the table to do so in many cases. I mean, I think many companies are still getting there, but this has really forced companies to look at the CIO and CISO in a much different light, a much more strategic leader. So I'm like Mark, I'm very positive on where we're going, but a lot of it comes down to the individual leaders to make the effort. So,
Michael, thank you so much for coming on the program today. Great job. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing you in person. Hey, Mark, so circling back to you, Mark, do we have some answer on the poll there?
Yeah, let's take a look at the poll, Nikki. So only 20%, 1 out of 5, would be less likely or much less likely to entertain a call from Tony or me. And clearly some 80% would be receptive to a call, about the same, a third. But look at that huge 48, almost half of the listenership today would be more or much more likely to take a call. Now we know that some of that is people bailing out of industries, hospitality, travel, transportation, and other consumer models, even retail. And so there's going to be change out of those challenged industries. And there's also a lot of folks that are saying, hey, my company didn't exactly handle COVID well. Nobody has the playbook, but they really didn't rise to the occasion. Or more recently, my company is not showing well in the face of racial injustice and social challenges. And I want to work for a company that has that conscience. And then there are just people who are ready to go, that are a little bit stir crazy from staying at home, and maybe changing jobs would change their home. I don't know. But we're seeing a very positive response on the supply side, the candidate side as well. And that's good stuff. Better demand, better supply. We're good to go, Hunter.
Hey, Mark, thanks for coming on the program. Always good insights. Really appreciate your support and engagement. Tony, good to see you. Michael, we'll see you soon. Have a great 4th, all, everyone.
Tthanks.
Good holiday.
Be safe.
Great.
Bye, Tony.
Stay with us.
Bye-bye.
Next up, securing the future of work, we have Lakshmi Hanspal. Lakshmi, you want to join the program? Great to see you. The last time we were together, we were having coffee at RSA. It's been a few months. A lot's changed.
It has been. It's great to be here, Hunter. Good to see you all.
You always blow me away. I actually consider you one of the most creative, innovative CISOs, I would say technology executives that I know. So what is it about your inquisitive, innovative mind that you're most excited about today in this portion of our innovation cycle here?
I'm just so, so glad, and it's just mind-blowing. There's some comments that you have a global audience today. There are people from parts of India that have joined, and I'm sure from many other parts of the world. And as I was thinking with HMG, and as you do the world tour yourself, I mean, this in itself has changed the way you would have these live sessions, isn't it?
That's correct.
And the audience and the diversity of thought and questions that would come our way with an audience and a panel. So I'm just super happy to be here and just looking at the composition here. The second is, we're in this ever-changing, not just COVID, but prior to that, but more so maybe COVID from an acceleration standpoint. We talked about acceleration. There are 2 other A's I want to add to that if we're doing the alliteration game here. One is amplified. So it has amplified some of our needs and what we need that could have either waited, had plans to be done in the next 6 months and so on. So it's amplified those needs. And then the last A is made apparent. So it's made apparent some of the gaps in our environment that can no longer be ignored. I tell my team, it's like, we've all screamed, the emperor has no clothes, right? So it's like, it's not a secret anymore. So accelerated, amplified, made apparent, and all of this needs creativity of thought. And that's where each one of us in our role is thinking about how we can do it better. I heard Rucha and others talking about how to keep teams motivated and how to contactless pay and contactless gas, sort of filling. And, I think it's just pushed the boundaries of creativity more and more.
So Lakshmi, any predictions?
So just rolling off of that, I think one of the predictions is like CISOs along with their CXO counterparts are going to be focusing more on secure remote work. For many companies, I think it's tested the ethos and culture. So I'm predicting that it's going to be remote first or perhaps even remote only. But more so my prediction is focused on, I'm saying we would go and secure remote work with precision using automation. That is ML and AI technologies with the scale of amplification and acceleration that we need. We probably cannot sustain it with just the people that we have. So secure remote work with precision using automation is going to be the flavor of our life for the next few years.
Lakshmi, great points, great insights. Stay with us. Let me bring in Frank Price. Frank's been a great friend of the HMG network for a long time. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Risk Officer at the Hudson's Bay Corporation. Frank?
Hi, Hunter, how are you today?
Great. Happy Thursday, right? Right before a long weekend, hopefully.
Yep, and since I'm from Hudson's Bay, I have to say happy Canada Day to all of my Canadian colleagues, and then a happy Independence Day to my United States colleagues.
Excellent. Great to have you here, Frank. So your title is interesting. It has Chief Information Risk Officer. What's the build?
So the Chief Information Risk Officer is kind of an evolution, and Lakshmi was talking a little bit about it. Some of your panel has as well. It's kind of combining some of the traditional information security and risk management functions along with focus on privacy and individualization, personalization support for business, because we understand at Hudson's Bay that creating a delightful experience for the customer involves personalization, but keeping the information and the behavior of the customer sacrosanct is important to building trust. Although I have to tell you that after listening to the panel, I'm trying to figure out how I can fit Chief Look Around the Officer, Look Around the Corner Officer onto my card. So I like that title too.
So what does it look like in the virtual world though, right? The work from home world, it's a different kind of look around officer, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say one of the, we were working on digital transformation before the COVID event occurred, but I'd like to springboard off of some of what my colleagues here said and say the end result is that we won't be brick and mortar, we'll be click and mortar. And that is really the way it's going to be for some time. I think that's actually the direction, right? So the retail sector obviously has always had to work with both being local and responsive, but also being virtual and global. And I think that you'll see that the strategy here, both in terms of digital transformation and information risk management, will move in that direction because the entire workforce of corporations, you know, the store presence will still be there, but the office presence is now moved.
So I got to believe you have a really forward-leaning CIO in working with Steve Gold. I got to believe that Steve has a full-on innovation agenda, accelerated agenda going on right now. How are you keeping up with his innovation?
Well, I got to run to keep up with Steve. He always sees everything coming, and he's there way ahead of the curve, and it's one of the reasons that I'm at Hudson's Bay. I think what we're looking at now is we're working on the challenge and taking it over to the security side for a minute is that what we've seen is that the workforce went home and the threat actors followed them, right? Last Thursday, we saw Symantec reporting targeted attacks against multiple Fortune 500 companies using wasted locker malware. And if you look at it from one way, the news for all of the security folks on the phone and for the CIOs as well is that you've probably increased the total number of endpoints because while the investment in your corporate networks and your virtual connections was very valuable, you probably got a whole new bunch of endpoints that maybe weren't as secure as you thought they were before. So the shift now is to make sure that we don't increase the stress on the workforce because they're already adapting to a lot, but we do have to now accept the reality that maybe not all of them, in addition to being their heads of household and taking care of their kids while they're home, that they now are going to become network administrators and do all of the hardening that they previously relied upon all of us to do.
Excellent insights, Frank. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Lakshmi, when you think about innovation in this cycle, working at Box, very innovative company, what are you seeing across all of your clients, on the external clients for the company, in terms of how they're protecting this distributed work from home environment?
So this has, it has done either of two things for our customer clients. It's accelerated some of the roadmap deliveries that they had planned. So there's been some shifting of priorities and what needed to be done earlier. For example, secure remote work was in the roadmap of many of our customers. It just has some added, stack rank priorities right now. So there's some acceleration that we're seeing. But more so, I just want to talk about from our viewpoint, we have also accelerated integration with some of our partners, several of them in this call and other calls that we've had to promote and to support sustained secure remote work. So you can think about collaborative tools like Zoom and WebEx and Slack and so on, but also in terms of malware detection, auto classification, smart detection, threat detection. So all of those that are needed from a sustained viewpoint for secure remote work. So acceleration is one that we definitely see. And the second is clearly there's a partnership and practitioner narrative that each of our customers seek today. Box, tell me how you've done it. Personally, to me, Lakshmi, how have you done it for Box itself or for other customers? So coming with that practitioner's narrative and saying, here's what the use case was, and here's how we did it. And by the way, we perhaps didn't get it right the first time, but now we're in this optimized scenario that we can share with you and perhaps accelerate how you can reach that optimized scenario. So that very transparent, real world narrative is what's helping most of our customers think about how they can continue to work and accelerate some of their secure remote work goals.
Excellent. Excellent, Lakshmi. Thanks so much. Hey, Chris, welcome back to the program. Welcome on the panel.
Thank you.
Any further thoughts on the topic here, Chris?
Well, it's interesting. Early on during the start of the pandemic, we didn't see the avalanche of targeted attacks. Like normally, when you see a major event, an earthquake, or any other catastrophe, the scams start almost immediately. And it was interesting to see even the attackers in this case took their time in ramping it up. It was before it hit this crescendo that we're seeing now. And there's a lot of unique challenges when people are in that work from home state. Part of it is just what they were used to. So business email compromise is an example where you see a lot of fraud where people try to email, look like they're coming from an executive, get them to transfer large sums of money. And the normal muscle memory there is to get up from your desk, walk down the hall, talk to a colleague, have them look at it. And that's been taken out of the equation. So right now there's this opportunity for attackers to basically fill in the void where people are now having to figure out new ways of communicating. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for a while. I mean, people are still adapting. They're good with getting on a Zoom, muting their microphone when needed, and all of those things. But all the other aspects of communication and collaboration, they're going to have to develop a new set of skills around how they do that and incorporate in really some of the existing things that they had for controls around fraud and risk that they maybe are just forgetting to use because they're in a new environment. So I think those are going to be some of the things that are going to continue to be a challenge. The highlighting of a lot of the ransomware attacks is an aspect where people were reliant on heavily centralized tools that required those devices, those end user devices, to be plugged into the corporate network in order to receive protection. That's another aspect of change that a lot of organizations are going to have to look at is how do we patch these devices? How do we adequately monitor these devices and receive telemetry back from them if they're not on the VPN for some reason? And is a VPN really a part of that solution going forward in what is increasingly a zero trust world?
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the program. Great insights. Really appreciate it, Chris. Hey, Frank, when you think of innovation, right, what are the opportunities and the benefits for the entire organization that we're learning out of this whole work from home environment?
So there are a few, Hunter. The first would be that just as we heard, since people are going to try and collaborate, you need to understand what normal is in your environment. And one of the good pieces of information is that the security programs typically will have the tools that can help the business adapt. One of them is you can use your user behavior analytics platforms to start to identify the behavior of your employees, not because you think they're doing something malicious, but to get a sense of what the new normal is, to identify perhaps if people's behavior has changed, if they're becoming disengaged, if we need to reach out to them. And I'm talking more in terms of a leadership and management level than with regard to a particular security item. The other areas where we can address and where I think we need to go, we're talking about an entire workforce that's been moved out of its normal environment. We need to reduce friction for them with regard to traditional security practices. And in that sense, get ready to accelerate that entire mobile workforce towards life after passwords. Because between the amount of social engineering that's going on, between the volume that your service centers are probably all getting in terms of your help desks from people now saying, I forgot my password, which is a lot bigger deal when it's the only way you can get in. We have to reduce friction by going to a strong authentication model that's passwordless. So using behavior-based authentication or another form. I recommend that everybody get involved with the FIDO Alliance and start to get ready for life after passwords, because your workforce, even if they don't know to ask you about it, they need it. So it's up to us to deliver it.
Final comments, Frank? Any final parting words?
I think that we've all heard a lot today about resilience. I think that that's probably the wave of the future. This was the year that securities lingo, I think, went mainstream, right? It's the first time that I've heard the rest of the world in the COVID world talking about elements of the kill chain and the incident response process to contain, to eradicate, and recover. And we, as an entity, every part of the security organization has the skill set to deal with this and to educate others about it. But what we need to do most right now is be the bodyguards of our organizations, not their wardens, help them get where they need to go and recommend the most safe way to get there.
Hey, Frank, great to have you on the program. Always good to see you, my friend. Give my best to Steve. Have a great holiday, okay?
Will do.
Hey, great. Hey, Chris, you want to come back on and just say one final word before we go?
Sure. No, I agree with Frank. You know, there is this transition that's happened to security being this enabler of the business, moving away from the organization of no, being that warden, and just being a facilitator, you know, showing the business how to get to their objectives in the most secure way possible. And the more we transition to that, the more we're going to see ops and security just come together to work on a single set of goals.
Chris, thanks so much for coming on the program. Have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Appreciate your support. Hey, Lakshmi, final word. Come on back into the program here. What are the 1, 2, 3 best ideas for parting thoughts?
I would say the 3 are, one is boundaries of trust continue to be tested, right? And so we gravitate towards boundaries that are built in, not bolted on in some way around the content that we care. Secondly, our dependency on automation through ML or AI continues to increase. So each of us should be thinking more about making that strategic guided investments in those areas. And the third one would be information governance is front and center, more so now than any time else for all of us. So content sprawl, any of that is on top of mind. And, you know, put these 3 together, the trust boundaries, automation, along with information governance. I think that's the recipe to successfully navigate these, you know, turbid environment that we're in right now. I'm personally excited, by the way, to tap talent from anywhere. So, you know, in this remote work scenario, I'm so excited that we can have a diverse talent, not just from a experience perspective, but truly from a location perspective as well.
Awesome. Lakshmi, always good to see you. Great job. Looking forward to having you again on another program soon. And we're launching a Women's Global Summit. Love to have you engaged in that as well.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Great. Thanks. Hey, what another great summit here in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, perhaps our 50th, 51st. I thought the content was brilliant. The content was genius. Probably the best ever. Certainly the best ever digital summit that we've delivered. Hey, Daphne, are you still with us? Are you still in the summit? I see you there. Can you join us? Daphne? Okay. The other panelists, join us? Yeah, that'd be great. I want to thank everyone for being actively engaged. And if you want, you can open up your microphone and comment. Guys, I thought this was an exceptional summit. Really did. I don't know anyone out there right now in an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, develops a content-rich network platform around the whole notion of leading, reinventing, innovating, reinventing the customer experience, reimagining business models and go to market in a safe, secure platform, doubling down on career ascent, and created a platform and ecosystem for all of you all to accelerate your professional brand and career ascent. A big thumbs up to all of you that were actively involved. And I meant that sincerely. We'll be sending a digital copy out of the author's note, which is the front end of my new book. And the digital copy will be sent out to you of the complete book late September, October. Also, you're going to be nominated as a top technology executive leader that matters for 2021, a big national program that we, it's about an eight-year long running program that we have. And we have a whole bunch of new initiatives that we're staging up here and spinning up here at HMG Strategy. And, we couldn't do this, what we do, without help from Commvault, Softtek, Tanium. Seriously, really appreciate their support. And when they reach out to you, if you take a meeting, I'd really appreciate it. And Daphne is my new partner in building out a go-to-market in terms of a boardroom ready and getting on a board business model, a brilliant model that we have in prototype now. Daphne, you want to say a couple words?
Yeah, I appreciate the partnership. This is really brand new, and we're going to be agile. We're going to be flexible. We're going to be resilient. We're not going to get it right perfectly the first time. And I know folks like Tony and Mark are going to be really important because they have placed and coached more people and forgotten about who they've coached than I'll ever know about coaching.
Never forget.
A board member. So it takes a village, and I think this is a village that we have here on the call, and I look forward to working. My goal is to get something out by the fall, and maybe there'll be a group of people that will go through it for free, but I would love for Mark and Tony to help, authenticate it and make it good, so that we know that it has the stamp of approval.
Happy to do that. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love to be included.
Thank you both.
So guys, thanks, Daphne. We have a whole bunch of new products and services we'll be launching here in the near future. Look for those. Stay dialed into the HMG Summit Series. We have the CIO Alliance that's been meeting for 10 years. And we have a new work group of the future, a group that we're launching with a new strategic partner here in the near future. Be safe over the holidays. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Digitally and in person, maybe in the fourth quarter.
Happy holidays, everybody. Happy holidays.
Great job.
Bye now.